In May, President Donald Trump established a Religious Liberty Commission, its primary goal to protect the free exercise of religion here in the United States. To discuss all of this and more, I'm joined by the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Texas, Chair of the Religious Liberty Commission, Dan Patrick. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for being here. You are the first chairman of this Religious Liberty Commission. First off, tell me, what do you see as the greatest threat to religious liberty? What did you hear at the meeting?
So, Raymond, thank you for having me. Our longtime friendship. It's great to be on with you.
Sure.
The biggest threat to religious liberty, twofold. One, the courts, and two, apathy by those people of faith. Because if you don't fight for it, you can lose it, whatever it is in life. And I talked in the committee in my opening remarks about the book of Jude, where Jude says we must contend earnestly. And that was when he was sending the message to the church then, that in essence, in today's language, you have to fight for your faith and be wary of those who come and try to undermine your faith and undermine the church. And so when I talked to the president about this last November, and he had already talked about religious liberty in his first 4 years, I said, I think the timing is right now. And he just loved the idea, and I give all the credit to the president. With everything that's been going on, he kept singular focus on, we're going to make this happen. And I just have the greatest committee of people, the greatest witnesses, and I hope people, they can go to danpatrick.org and hear it. It's about 5 hours long. You hear it a little bit at a time, and you'll learn so much about what our founders' intent, what the Establishment Clause is about, and so much more, and how we lost it in this country through court decisions, basically after World War II up until really kind of the current Trump court.
Yeah, we've seen a contraction of that constitutional right to religious liberty. The commission met for the first time on Monday at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. Among the members in attendance, Bishop Robert Barron, Dr. Phil McGraw, Dr. Ben Carson, who's vice chair, and many others. Dan, what were the standout moments in your estimation?
So the standout moments were how we came together as a committee, because when I spoke in the Rose Garden back on National Prayer Day, when the president announced the executive order for the Commission on Religious Liberty, I said I felt like a pair of brown shoes in a room full of tuxedos, and that's the truth. I know a lot about history. I know a lot about the Bible. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm surrounded by people who have spent their whole life in dealing with religious liberty, and so I had the most to learn, and I learned the most, Raymond. And so what stood out to me was how well our committee worked together. Most of us all came together 30 minutes before the committee, because all of these people have such outstanding schedules and commitments. Yeah. And so we came together and we made it a conversation. The witnesses were terrific. They talked in plain language, not in legalese speak or things that would, might be boring to the average listener. They made our founding fathers come to life, and their words come to life. And then the second half of the day, as you know, in the afternoon, we went through all these court cases from the 40s on. See, here's the thing, Raymond, that is clear to me. Congress or state legislatures would have never taken a vote to take prayer out of public school, would have never taken a vote to say you can't have a nativity scene, would have never taken a vote to say you have to bake a cake for anyone who comes in your door, even if it undermines your conscience and belief in your faith. It's all happened through the courts, Raymond. It's all happened by the courts, and particularly the Warren Court and Hugo Black in the 70s in the courts. They just took all of our religious liberty away, and now we're fighting to bring it back. Because if you lose religious liberty, Raymond, all the other liberties fall by the wayside quickly.
You lose everything. You lose speech. You lose the right to assemble. You lose everything. I just mentioned Bishop Robert Barron of Winona, Rochester, the bishop there. He spoke of the secular attacks on religion. I'll play this and get your reaction.
There's a texture to the way religion is being attacked in our society. It's coming from a Arenian philosophy that Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, called the dictatorship of relativism. I'd call it the culture of self-invention, the complete prioritization given to individual autonomy, that we decide value, we decide meaning, we decide purpose.
Your thoughts on what Bishop Barron said there?
Well, first of all, he and I have become fast friends. He's just such a great guy, and I've really enjoyed the time I've spent with him. So if you think about it, Raymond, our founders could have taken the easy way and established a religion, and that's why the First Amendment is so important. They went the opposite way, and they really gave us this magnificent inheritance of you have the right to pray and worship as you choose, and we have lost that inheritance. So when you get back to this, many people have given up. Look, a lot of your viewers right now probably have questions. Where can I pray? When can I pray? Can I wear my faith symbol to work? Can the boss tell me to take it off? Can the homeowners association tell me to take my flag down for my faith? Whatever it is, people are confused in this country, and so they retreat. And so what he's really talking about, in my view, was we have taken away that individualism, those rights that our founders fought for and gave us, and we have to reclaim those.
Yeah, and rights given by God that the founders just carried on. I mean, they didn't even come from them. It came from God. These are divine gifts and rights. One of the themes of the meeting was that distinction between freedom of worship and the free exercise of religion. That citizens should not only be able to worship as they wish within their churches, but also to be able to carry that faith into the public square without being attacked. Why is that distinction so important, Dan? And why does it often get lost when religious liberty is discussed?
So Rabbi Soloveitchik brought that up in one of his questions, because he said when we talk about the freedom to worship, that really means, well, okay, you can go worship as you wish in your church of your choice. But don't take it out. Don't exercise your religion outside of your church. So he really changed that in that question or his opening remarks. I forget where he said that, when he said it is not about the right to worship. It's about the right, free exercise of your faith and to pray. And this commission, by the way, Raymond, that the president handed down an executive order on National Prayer Day on May 1st. Our charter is to advise the president and report to the president, which we will do after about 7 or 8 hearings about this time next year, and give him a report on what he can do in executive orders or maybe legislation he'll recommend to Congress to take up. But I think part of this will be, let's make sure we make that clear. The right to worship can actually be kind of a hidden thing to really keep your faith behind church doors. Well, and that's not what we want. We, as Christians, we step outside of the doors.
Yeah, and Dan, every time this topic comes up, you hear, well, wait a minute. Jefferson and the founders insisted on a separation of church and state. Well, that separation was intended to keep the government from intruding into the church, not the other way around, not to exclude public expressions of faith in public.
Yeah, and that was part of the testimony of one of our witnesses, that Hugo Black was the one who really brought that out. And I think it was a 1971 case where he took that and put it into the common discussion of the separation of church and state. And in my opening remarks, Raymond, you may remember, I said, look, let's just talk about faith communities. And America is, look, we are still the strongest faith community in the world as a country for our Christian faith, and we respect all faiths in our country. But what do faith communities do? We have charitable hospitals. We help the poor. We help the drug and alcoholic addicted. We help mothers who have crisis pregnancies. We give more money around the world to help people, wherever it may be. The moral value of the faith community is powerful in this country. And why is it America is the only one that does that? I mean, think about it. We are the leader in that. We're only 6 or 7% of the world population, but we lead on those values, and it comes from our faith community. So it's, when you look at what the founders did, it wasn't an accident. They designed the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They designed it. The Declaration and the Bible are almost interchangeable. And that's why we have been blessed. Our last witness, Christian Wagoner from ADF, said something I thought was powerful. America is the last country in Western civilization that still defends religious liberty. Most of Europe has given it away already.
Yes, they have. And consequently, those governments and those societies are collapsing. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, during the meeting, voiced some criticism of the previous administration, which seemed to allow or even encourage attacks on religious liberty, mainly the persecution of and incarceration of peaceful pro-life activists, the infamous FBI investigation into traditional Catholics, and the shuttering of churches during COVID.
That faith was built into the foundation of our nation's founding documents. There was no mistake when it was included in the First Amendment. Our founding fathers understood that every individual must be free to worship without fear, without coercion, and without government interference.
Dan, how can the commission effectively protect one of the most sacred rights given to us by the Constitution, both on the federal and the local level?
Yeah. So, and the reason, of course, I've known Pam for a long time, and I just love her. She's the nicest person in the world, but also the toughest. She's a perfect Attorney General for our country. But we actually serve under the Department of Justice as an agency. Our commission does. And so one of the things that came out from our witnesses, because we asked our witnesses, what would you suggest to the president if you were in the Oval Office? And of course, again, this is the first of many hearings. And one is, and this is, I think, a way to protect our religious liberty. First of all, the Supreme Court needs to take up more cases, and they need to quit kicking them back down to the lower courts, like this case we had against a Catholic school in Oklahoma, because we have an attorney general out there who just went against it, but it was a 4-4 vote. And I think a case like that will come back and we'll win that case of can you have money going into a charter school, et cetera, a private Catholic school. And so we have to get the courts at every level to take more cases on these big decisions. But on a lot of these cases, Raymond, the courts need to stay out of it. The courts need to stay out of it if there's not a general harm to the public. And so the courts have, again, since Trump came in 2016, and again, his justices we've won the last 12 or 13 in a row, but we lost thousands that never got to the court, or thousands of cases at the lower levels to get to the court. So we've got a lot of work to do, but the courts need to do more work. The Supreme Court needs to quit kicking them back down. They need to take a stand. And we, as believers, Catholic, Protestants, Jews, any other faith folks in this country, we need to stand up and not give up the fight. Again, contend earnestly from the book of Jude. That's what he talked about. We contend earnestly, and that's what we have to do in this country, or we will lose this liberty, because most of this has happened by the courts, and we have to fight back strong.
Dan, very quickly, in addition to your new post as chair of this Religious Liberty Commission, you are the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. You led the Senate in passing legislation to end the teaching of critical race theory, DEI practices at universities, placing In God We Trust in the Texas Senate. But this was all done legislatively. Are you concerned that so many of these issues, particularly of faith, are handled via executive order? And what will the commission do to ensure that that's not the case in the future?
Well, executive orders, depending who's writing them. I'm very happy with the executive order from the president, for example, that created this commission, or the faith office. This president has used the name of Jesus more than any other president in history, I think, in the Oval Office. And to open up a faith office steps away from the Oval Office. And by the way, the faith office, which is separate, but we work together with them, they are instituting these faith issues in all of our agencies. So can someone try to reverse that in the future? Of course. But whether it's an executive order or through congressional legislation or court decisions, we have to be in the fight. We can never let up. They gave the case of the cake baker, where the gay couple wanted him to bake a cake, and he fought back. He's been in the Supreme Court now, the testimony was, for 13 years. He won one case and someone else sued him. He's moved to multiple states. But you know what? He is not giving up on his religious liberty. So we have to be very smart in government, and we have to be very smart about how we walk down this path with the president. But we have a president who believes in God, believes in Jesus Christ, and who has said, I want my government to reflect the values of where I know most of the country is. And again, if you choose not to believe, you choose not to believe. The great thing about America, you can have that choice too if you want.
Dan, among your legislative accomplishments in Texas, you expanded border security, including adding billions of dollars to increase border enforcement. Yesterday, a New York Post article read, and I'll read this to you, Border Patrol agents didn't release a single migrant into the U.S. last month, a staggering drop after the Biden administration allowed 62,000 illegal crossers into the country in May of 2024. Dan, tell us about the border situation in Texas now compared to a year or 2 years ago. Are you noticing any differences?
It's a massive difference. In fact, we were able to take about $3 billion back away from what we've been spending on the border to give more tax relief to Texans, because under Joe Biden, we had to spend billions and billions a year to protect our own state and protect America. Yeah, we were having thousands and thousands and thousands cross the border every day. I think yesterday is the lowest on record, 95 people. And our border with Mexico is the distance from Atlanta to Portland, Maine. That's how big our border is. So considering that we only had 95 people cross, Joe Biden sold our country out. And look, we should have legal immigration. No one should have to come to America in the back of an 18-wheeler and suffocate to death in 110-degree heat. No woman should have to be raped, or a young girl as part of the bounty to come here. We need legal immigration reform, and that has to be done. And I know you're short on time. Two other bills I want to tell you about this session that we passed. We put the 10 Commandments back in every classroom. It's a voluntary program. So if a church adopts a school or an individual or business, they take a 16 by 20 copy framed of the 10 Commandments, and the schools are required to hang it. We've now opened up a cottage industry. We're starting to churn out the 10 Commandments everywhere. We're going to be taking them to schools. And we passed Senate Bill 11, which puts prayer back in public school to give you the time if you wish to have private time to pray. And of course, as you said, I put In God We Trust in the Senate as my first bill 17 years ago, and I put Under God in the state pledge. So when you give your life to God, good things happen. And I'm so blessed and to be in this position. I'm so grateful to the president for asking me to chair this committee. It is the most important job I've ever been given, quite frankly.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And we will check in on the commission. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you, my friend.